This is the first intro I'm recording where I don't know if I'm using it because at this moment I do not know what I decided to do. But if you are hearing this, this is part 3 of my Is Dance a Sport conversation series situation. Part 2 went a little longer than I anticipated, me defending why dance is not a sport. Part 1 was defending why it is a sport. And then my own thoughts, my personal views on the subject went a little longer than I anticipated. And so if you are watching or listening to this, then I decided to make this, again, my personal thoughts, its own standalone podcast. So welcome. It's good to have you here. This is my podcast, Hey Dancer. I'm your host, Miller DeRay. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you checking in. Take a moment. I look at all the things. It means a lot to me. Review and rate the show. Like, comment, follow, share, subscribe, wherever you're watching or listening. It means a lot. Okay, let's get to it. Now, it's funny. I've spent some time here just for fun trying to find quotes, by famous dancers or choreographers calling dance a sport or comparing it with sports. And I could really only find 2. Stephen Boss, aka Twitch, may he rest in peace. He once said, "I'm a Gatorade athlete because dance is being recognized as a sport now. It always should have been, but now it is. It's very exciting." Neve Campbell, the actress. Does anybody remember Party of Five? That was a great show. She's very famous from Scream, that whole franchise. She has a big dance background, and she once said, "Dance is certainly a sport, and they are phenomenal athletes, and they're also artists." I don't know. Is it telling that I couldn't find any other quotes by well-known dancers or choreographers about dance being a sport? I don't know. I mean, I Googled it. And Google says that Misty Copeland calls ballet a sport and references one video in particular. Well, you listen to the clip and you tell me.
Like, I would describe what you do as sport, but it's obviously performing arts. Do you consider, like most of America, do you consider yourself an athlete that's in the performing arts?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
It is equally as athletic as any professional sport. And then you add on the element of being an actor, an actress. I mean, we use the technique of ballet as a tool to tell a story.
Right.
So it's not just a physical feat, and we have to make it look effortless, which takes even more effort. It's not like you're in the gym and you're making whatever face you want and you're grunting. It's like you have to look elegant and you literally have to act and tell a story. So to me, it's not a sport because we're not competing, but it is extremely athletic. And, we have a lot of the same injuries as professional athletes. I remember my first really serious injury. I had 6 stress fractures in my tibia and I had to have a plate inserted into my tibia. And the doctor, and he treats a lot of professional football and basketball players. And he was like, "I don't understand how this happened. Like, did someone tackle you?" And I was like, "No, it's like repetitive jumping, maybe not always being on the right surfaces," which is so hard as a professional dancer because you'll get gigs and things and they don't have the right, proper flooring and things like that. And as dancers, it's like you don't get paid enough and you often take opportunities that you shouldn't be taking because it's not the right setup for you, but you do it. And so that's kind of like how dancers end up with the injuries that they get. It's like just not the proper rest, which is equally as important as the training that you're putting in. And so, yes, it's very physical.
I found that really fascinating. Google AI pulls from this interview the athleticism aspect and the injury aspect to tell us that Misty Copeland says, yes, dance is a sport. But when you look a little bit deeper and you do a little bit more digging, no, she doesn't say that. My thoughts on this continue to evolve. The more I think about something, sleep on something, do research on something, hear from you guys on something, because my audience is really smart and they have been chiming in on this topic. I've been posting teasers for this podcast series and I get all kinds of amazing responses that make me think a little bit more. And I'll be sharing just a few of those right now. At Corvid_Gremlin_Cause says, "I think of it this way. Sport used to more frequently mean something done for leisure. Hunting, falconry, and horseback riding were all done for sport, as well as being some people's livelihoods and were thus considered sports. So, in my opinion and experience, dance is simultaneously an art form, athletics, and a sport in the way that it can be done as a hobby for sport as well as a livelihood." Now, I love this comment. It actually had me Googling falconry And the first thing that popped up was that falconry is both an art and a sport. Who knew? Another thing to throw into that box of something that is both an art and a sport. I love this angle because it really kind of reflects sport, I think, from a more old school sort of idea, but also a very valid definition of sport. To do something for sport, I think is really cool. At Dynamite, the Dancing Diva says, I consider dance a sport, but not necessarily because of its competitive nature. The training that goes into learning the art sport of dance, how you have to fuel your body properly, having the mindset, again, not necessarily competitive, learning how to protect the body from injuries and how to properly heal from them. There's so much more that makes the art of dance also a sport beyond the competitive nature. So this person touched on something that I think said in so many words in my Why Dance is a Sport podcast, which is, it's about the training, it is about the athleticism, it is the endurance, it is about injuries and protecting yourself from injury, and very much kind of aligns with what I Played Misty Copeland had said about it. I still don't, again, it's about definition. So for that person, this is why it's a sport. It is the athletic nature of it. It is what other elite athletes have to do, and dancers have to do too, because they're also elite athletes. And for some people, this is what makes dance a sport. And I grant that, and it's totally fair. At makava._ says, one of my least favorite arguments about this is the subjective nature of it, as if all sports aren't subjective. Referees or judges make calls that are determined by them, whether it's a foul, unsportsmanlike conduct, etc. A lot of people don't agree with many calls because many are subjective, especially before we could catch stuff on camera. This comment really was not something that I had touched on yet, approached, thought about, and it is so smart, and it is something that I myself have been saying as a sports watcher. When I was a kid, I was an avid baseball fan. And I remember just always being like frustrated with the calls by the umpires, like, oh, this guy stole second base and he's clearly out. Like the camera shows he's out, but no, the umpire says he's safe. What do you mean that was a strike? It was clearly a ball, getting so like upset about it. And I kind of forgot that sports, like those team sports, are often very subjective. This is a very smart and wise comment. I remember recently, a couple of months ago, watching like a big football game with a friend of mine who is a diehard sports fan of a particular team, this one football team. And this game trended because the referees had some very controversial takes on their calls, like 3 really bad ones that were in favor of the other team. And the collective agreement was that this team, my friend's favorite team, was the victim of these really, really bad calls. And the game went in the other team's favor. It was totally not right. It wouldn't have done that. And it was like, again, huge trending on Twitter. Like it shouldn't have been. The cameras showed otherwise, but the refs were making these like really bizarre calls. People had wondered even, were they paid off? So I'm just saying that there you are. It's a football game. It's a baseball game. It's numbers. It's scores. It seems black and white, but it's not. There's a lot of subjectivity to some sports also where we just don't think it's built in, but it's very much built in. This whole debate, is dance a sport or isn't it a sport? When you dig really deep into what is called a sport, it's just kind of funny in general, and it makes the whole thing feel almost meaningless. Because a lot of things out there are called a sport. I'll give you 2 examples. Some call cornhole a sport. You know that game, right? Where you toss a beanbag into this whole thing. Well, because of the hand-eye skill, the hand-eye coordination aspect of it, it is called a sport by many. ESPN labels poker a sport. I will say that again to you. ESPN calls poker a sport because of the brain power involved. Interesting. But where is the athleticism? I mean, come on. And if poker and cornhole are called sports, what is so important about anything being called a sport? Do you see what I mean? So, my personal thoughts on this. Let's be clear first and foremost. Obviously, you know this, but I am not the authority on this. I'm just one guy. I'm one dancer giving an opinion. It's cool if you see it a whole other way. I love that. I love conversation. I love differing opinions as long as we come at it with love and respect. But I will just say for me, in my heart of hearts, calling dance a sport, I don't love it. I kind of don't like it. There is something within me where it doesn't align. Like I have a resistance to it. I just think it ultimately does dance somewhat of a disservice. Like dance is so big, it's so grand. And to put it in this sports box, and yes, I've already granted and acknowledged the areas where it can certainly be a positive and an asset. And I've advocated for why and where and when it may be necessary. That said, at the end of the day, it just feels to me like it makes dance way smaller than it is. It's way bigger than sport. Dance is art and just art to me. Okay, just me. Again, it's movement, it's stories, it's soul. Dancers are athletes. Yes, we've said that often now. Those stamina stats, they do not lie, but that's just not the core of dance. Art is the core of dance. I get, or I should say I'm starting to get, why people push sport, though. They're disappointed and kind of upset that dancers don't get the respect they deserve, whether it's in college, on movie sets, or anywhere else. And they feel that the sport title will help with that respect. I mean, I even mentioned this in one of my very first podcasts about why I quit dance at 19 years old. That was a big reason for me. I saw the way dancers were treated on set early on. I saw that lack of respect. So if calling dance a sport gets dancers more funding, support, respect, anything, sure, I'd love to hear how, and I would back that. That said, another of my concerns is that comps and classes these days lean really, really hard into tricks and acro, way over musicality, way over artistry and feeling. To me, common sense suggests that the more dance is considered a sport, labeled a sport, talked about with regard to being a sport, it's just going to keep going in that direction, where it's dependent on the tricks and things. And for me, that strips away what dance is, which is the artistry and the musicality. It is a dancer's rhythm. It's a dancer's soul, that you want to see. And it's art. It's just art. Don't get me wrong. I love watching and supporting college dance teams. Whenever it pops up on my, social media feed, I have to watch these insane routines. They're just incredible. 50 dancers doing fouettes in sync perfectly, to the millisecond for 5 minutes, and then they fall to their knees and they pop up and they flip. It's like, what? It's just incredible to watch. But I always watch those things, and I have to admit, my thought is, where is the musicality? Where is the rhythm? Where is feeling the beat? There's no artistry. It can feel like a trick factory. That isn't dance to me. When dance gets quantified, tricks scored to win, it's just, to me, a bit robotic and not about passion. I want dance supported as art. Go see a show, back a program, not chasing sports cash. And so that's just where I lean, okay? Again, it's just my opinion, and I have learned with this topic that, again, ultimately it's arbitrary, there is no right or wrong, and it's just the lens in which you see something. And I think that's a beautiful thing. How many arts out there can you really say that about? I mean, seriously, I can't think of anything else where you would really say, wow, this art fits into all kinds of categories. It shows, again, how special dance is. Dance has been here for thousands of years and will be here for thousands of years after we are all gone. And you want to know what? We really cannot say the same thing with utter certainty for any big-time pro sport. Now, can we? That is the power of dance. And that is my lens after years of dancing, especially coming back in my return to dance. I'll end on this quote that I once shared on my social media, and it seemed to resonate with a lot of people. It takes an athlete to dance, but an artist to be a dancer. And that was said by Shauna or Shayna LaFleur. Oh my God, I'd love to have your thoughts on this. I'm dying for your thoughts. Agree, disagree. Tell me everything in the comments or in a review on Apple. Don't forget to rate the show. Send me a DM on social media at Back to Great. Tell me what you think. Thanks so much. Rate the show. Please, share with your dance fam. This is an important topic, and I hope I did it some justice. Again, I appreciate you being here. Your take really does matter to me. And next time, we're on a whole different topic. All right, until then.